27. I'm head teacher of Southend High School for Boys, but I'm also here because I'm a trustee of Southend Education Trust and on the steering group of the National Association of School Partnerships.
My name is Prubi Naidu. I'm representing CoSTED and the Tendring Education Trust.
My name is Pat Barron. I'm the head teacher at St Bernard's High School in Westcliff-on-Sea.
And I'm Frances Neal, and I'm the head teacher of St Mary's Primary School in Southend-on-Sea, voluntary aided Church of England.
And I'm Jill Wood, head teacher at Barron School, primary school and nursery.
My name is Sue Martin, and I'm the director of Corby Learning Partnership.
I'm Ashley Eastwood. I'm currently the head teacher of Thorpe Greenways Junior School, but from September I'll be the head of the Greenways Federation of Schools.
I think get your objective right in the first instant, secure the structure within which you're going to work.
Do your research. Whilst people think that you may be trailblazing, actually there's usually somebody that's done it before.
At least moving towards a position of trust with your colleagues across schools is also a really big, crucial element of what you would need to do.
I think it's getting to know each other, but also getting to know each other's schools and getting to know the context in which we are partners.
A starting point is making sure that you've got a very clear sense of what you want to get out of it. So it's either a common problem, it might just be more effective teaching of a subject, or it might be sharing expertise, something that you know that you're going to see a real gain by working together on.
Communication and trust. You really need to have established where you're starting from and that you're all moving in the same direction and the vision is going to be the same.
When it comes to working with partners closely, I think making sure that you build trust and you focus on the relationship to start with. I don't think you need to do anything other than get to know each organisation exceptionally well.
And I think it's making sure we have regular meetings, that it's not just involved at the head level, but other teachers and other staff are involved as well.
I think for my own school, and Sandra, who's being the Chief Executive of Southend Education Trust, has said this to me. She has openly said, we have probably given more than we've received. Okay, so in terms of benefits do come when you are giving out expertise, because when you're forced to explain to somebody why something's working in your own school, or you're forced to share expertise, the act of being required to explain why something works makes you look very closely at what it is you're doing. The more you know which bits of what you're doing are critical, which bits are essential, then the more you can focus on those and sharpen your own practice. So I think the major benefit is, I think, as a school we have become more efficient. We put less effort into things that aren't giving us gain, and we put more effort into the things that are actually having an impact on the students and on the learning in the classroom.
There are many benefits. I think we've been talking this morning about social capital, and there is a tremendous social capital in Corby. There's also an intellectual capital. Both of these areas are journeys that we're on. I would think our intellectual capital is a more tricky one because it involves trust and a whole host of sort of interesting, I suppose, areas that come into that around the intellectual capital, because when you have things like league tables and those kind of things that induce competition, then that actually affects the trusting relationship.
I think the benefits of working together as partners is that you share ideas, and the best teachers are magpies, so they steal each other's ideas, and then you have a starting place, so you're not looking at a blank sheet of paper. So you can take those ideas, you can tailor them to your own context and your own school and your own staff, and feel that you're actually contributing to another school in another context as well.
There have been a number. I mean, we now have a combined agreement for a homeschool agreement, so that any of the 6 schools, all of the parents get the same experience from the schools. They can expect the same outcomes from us. They can expect to provide us with the same sort of thing. So we have a common attendance policy. We have a common understanding of what we mean by learning and teaching and outcomes for children. For us, the most difficult thing has been getting enough people involved, because actually this started out as essentially a conversation amongst 6 heads. that we wanted to improve communication and collaboration. And the most difficult thing is actually filtering that down through the rest of your staff so that they actually take ownership of it as well. Because whilst the heads, we still have the strategic view, actually quite a lot of the projects that we run are now run by other members of staff working together.
The most difficult things I suspect relate to integrating individual school priorities with the perceived difference of the broader priorities of the partnership. In an ideal world, they should be one and the same thing. How do you overcome that? Well, with difficulty, but it's largely getting the schools to actually be in the driving seat in terms of where the partnership's going, so there's greater ownership around that.
The most difficult thing about working in partnership in the initial stages is time. It's incredibly hard work. You need to remain committed to it because sometimes it gets really tricky. It's been a bit of a roller coaster of a ride.
Probably the most difficult thing is that you're bringing together people with competing views. Particularly when you bring head teachers together, we tend to be people who are quite headstrong. We have to be because our job requires us to be. And so when you bring head teachers together, it's easy to allow your competing views to distract you from the common purpose.
We've been at this though for 12 years, so history has sort of meant that there have been rises and falls and dips along the way, and we've sort of plateaued and then we've moved up and then we've gone down. So it depends on which way you want to spin it. If you want to look at outcomes in Ofsted terms, if you want to look at again social capital, the trust relationships, it depends on how you want to look at it really. But there is certainly still a good healthy degree of competitiveness across our schools.
Well, it's interesting because actually I'm also a trustee for SECT, so I've been working with Southend Education Trust now since I became a head, in actual fact, which was 1999, in one form or another. And part of the work that I do with them is about developing leadership partners. So it wasn't until I got involved in that piece of work that actually I really benefited from working alongside other colleagues. And I think the advantage of this association is to free us up, to feel safe that it's actually okay to work alongside other people.
I mean, my instincts are to work in partnerships anyway. And as we've worked quite a lot over the years with Sandra Roberts in terms of the person who seems to be driving this quite considerably, my instincts are that yes, we continue working in partnerships, and this, in changing times, I think offers quite a good anchor in terms of organisations working in their own respective partnerships of coming together for a broader sharing and a broader kind of mutual support.
I think the National Association for School Partnership is something that's quite new as an organisation, but it's something we recognise is a way forward, and that all schools will have to work together. The way the government is utilising their money, local authorities are becoming less important, and we have to be stronger as schools individually and in partnerships.
From our position where we federated, we had to reinvent a wheel that had already been invented, and it took us a long time to find out the information that we needed to in terms of the nuts and bolts. So I think in terms of what the organisation can offer, if they've got case studies, people to talk to that can help save time by knowing how others have already done it and making links with other organisations, that would be exceptionally useful. And obviously I think the other thing is that we can put into the organisation, because we've already been through that experience and people can learn from our mistakes.
I find it really exciting because certainly in this role it can be a really isolating role. If you explain to somebody that you work in education, they immediately think you're a teacher. They can box that. When you say you head up a school partnership, they don't know what a school partnership is. And trying to explain that to the layperson, that sounds pompous, but I mean people who, actually sometimes I look at it myself and I think, what is it? My job description doesn't bear any, a lot of people say this, don't they? It doesn't bear any correlation with what I do. So to actually come across the concept of an organisation that brings together school partnerships and empowers them to to be a school partnership in whatever that formulation is. So whether it's a hard federation, a loose structure, 26 schools, 3 schools, 8 schools, it's very exciting for me.
I think I've got 2 interests. One is I think it's fantastic that examples like Southend Education Trust are being talked about. I think that's good for us, it's good for Southend, and I'm not ashamed of the fact that the partnership is being very much promoted by what's happening in Southend, and there are other partners at the beginning as well. But to get that message out is good for Southend, good for us. But the second thing is I want to hear how other people are doing the same kind of thing, what structures they're using, what's working. Been talking with a chap from Peterborough, and they've got links in their partnership with a lot more commercial organisations, local employers. So it's a different model. I think it's interesting to hear that and to take out of it the little bits. And you only need to come together once, twice a year to hear those examples, to just get the little gems that give you then another few months of work.
I think a really vibrant and evolving website would be an excellent first point of contact. I'd like to see them build up a bank of experts in the range of partnerships that are out there and how they've evolved. I think the vision and purpose behind it is clear, but sometimes you need that practical advice at the ground level of how you move forward. So the legalities of it, how do you manage the budgets, what have other people done, and those sorts of things.
An event like today, for example, I mean, it's certainly my feeling from the people in the room and certainly from my colleagues that are with me, is that the morning's been very, very positive. So if we come together at various points to actually engage collectively in change and the current developments and how we might then mutually support each other, I think that could be the strength of the organisation.
Has to help schools to understand what underpins effective partnerships, and that is a clarity of purpose and a parity of partners.
I think the opportunity to come together 2 or 3 times a year for high quality stimulation, this occasion through David Hargreaves, but it could be other people. The opportunity to hear other people's stories. On occasions I think it would be good to have some hosted visits, so for schools, I don't know where, in the northeast, to invite people in to see what they're doing and to hear the stories. But I think it needs to, I guess the same language as I used earlier, it needs to be tight enough to say this is what we do, we are interested in how partnerships work, case studies of them, materials that help them, but loose enough to let people just get on with their stuff so that it's not a forced model for everybody.
I think an ongoing network is really valuable, and obviously that's presumably email is always the best medium for that, isn't it? But there's great power in actually coming together and having a conversation with people. So it would be good to see some sort of key contacts that actually, if you're having a particular challenge on a day, and I would sort of throw myself in the ring for it as well. Whether I'd be any good at it is quite another issue. But just that sort of helpline almost. That kind of partnership hotline. Help! This is a real issue I've not come across. Did you do this? Have you done that? I did it this way. That kind of thing would be quite nice. I also think getting us on the national agenda would be really superb, because again, defining partnerships and understanding, a network of networks. And I understand that, but I think, it's quite wordy. Do people really know what that means? For some people, this is just so open and so structureless that, it leaves them kind of running for some kind of order and form. And of course, partnerships, from where I sit, they don't work like that. Order and form, great. You do need some structure. You do need some organisation, some management. But, the openness is great. So I think really if we could get NASP, out there and really sort of overt. I'm not suggesting that we get the sort of top-down heavy government bit, but I think if we use that to actually promote school partnerships and their value, I think that's getting lost because of the fragmentation, with the open market, and partnerships might start to sort of be seen as, fragmenting a little bit and becoming competitive across the board.
In terms of where we take our partnership onto the next step, we were at that point anyway, as I'm sure most partnerships are in current times, and it's just given us quite an impetus in terms of how we might look at the structural next step.
just listening to Professor Hargreaves talk through the model, I mean, we've referred to the papers quite regularly through our own journey, but it's just been inspirational for him to talk through the actual theory behind it.
I think the biggest thing that I've learned is something that this morning has helped me to realise. Our schools are filled with what I loosely call two different types of teacher. Teachers who are Generation X. They were born in the 60s or the 70s, they grew up during the 70s, and for them, the thing that they most seek is to be left alone to do their job. That's their highest kind of goal. And then you've got Generation Y teachers born in, say, the 80s, now just into the early 90s, who grew up in a completely different cultural context, and for them connectedness is what matters most. So, call them the Facebook generation or whatever if you like. And you've got these two different groups of people, a lot of experience in the older teachers, but they like to be left alone, and the younger teachers who are very much wanting to explore together, work together. That's how they think, that's how that's what their social life is like as well. And so for me, one of the things that's emerged from this morning is how we have got a fantastic opportunity to bring those kind of two cultures together in partnership within and beyond the schools. I don't know quite what it looks like, but understanding it is actually the beginning of sorting it out. So that's been a good idea for me this morning.
Brilliant listening to David Hargreaves. He's talking stuff that makes sense to me. And lots of things I've learned, particularly his model that he was describing around some of the capital and around some of those sort of soft things about partnerships that are so hard to describe, because in education it is all about hard outcomes, it is all about performance, and so much of partnerships is not about any of that. It might lead to that, you would hope it does lead to that, but the work that's done around partnerships is not about that. It's about using completely different skills, about drawing people together, about collaboration, about trust, and about spending the time explaining to them and people in schools the value of why they should think about the core children and young people within their area, and whatever that area is, whether it's geographical or an academy chain. And that's where the wealth of work is done that leads to those good outcomes, those positive outcomes. And I suppose, if we're not careful, we would be in danger of losing all of that work because it's so hard to justify, because doesn't it just look like a nice load of soft skills being used? So it's great to hear that sort of research and gravitas that has gone into the model that David Hargreaves is talking about. And, when you've got people like the National College obviously putting the spotlight on these things, it again adds credibility to school partnerships, which could just be seen as a nice little flimsy get-together and all having a jolly out and actually not ever achieving anything. So I've learned quite a lot actually today.